Everyone remembers the flashing cameras, the black Mercedes, the Paris tunnel. But while the world mourned, one detail was scrubbed clean from every report: a velvet pouch found beneath the crushed seat. Its contents never made public. Why? What could possibly be so dangerous, so earth-shattering, that it was erased from history? Before we uncover what this truly means for the royal family, make sure you're subscribed. Moments like this shape history quietly, and what comes next matters more than you might expect. August 31st, 1997. Paris, the Pont de l'Alma tunnel. The moment the car hit the 13th pillar, the world was changed forever. Sirens screamed, camera flashes pierced the smoke, and chaos gripped the tunnel's hollow darkness. Diana, the people's princess, was dying, her story seemingly ending in tragedy. But what if her story didn't end there? What if the most unsettling part was never told? In the aftermath, amid the devastation, something quietly slipped through the cracks. A small royal blue velvet pouch. Unassuming at first glance, soft, discreet, elegant. Not registered among Diana's known belongings. Not listed on any crash report, yet present. Found crushed beneath her seat by a French emergency worker who later resigned abruptly, never to speak publicly again. Inside, allegedly, were 3 items: a necklace never catalogued in any royal collection, a gem-encrusted brooch without an origin, and a sealed note addressed not to her sons, nor to any royal official, but to an anonymous woman referred to only as E. All of it vanished. The official police inventory contains no mention of the pouch. The photographs from the crash scene, widely circulated, are conspicuously missing a shot taken from the lower rear footwell, the very spot where the pouch was supposedly discovered. French authorities offered no explanation. British officials declined comment. Yet in leaked internal communications, 2 words appear again and again: contain optics. But it doesn't stop there. A Parisian investigator, young, bright, and newly promoted, reportedly began asking questions about these inconsistencies. A week later, he was reassigned to traffic citations. When pressed, he told a friend over drinks, "They said she had something she never should have touched." That friend later claimed he was warned not to repeat the story. He never did. So why such urgency? Why such swift suppression? Because these weren't mere trinkets. The moment Diana died, the monarchy shifted into survival mode. What they feared wasn't just scandal, it was exposure. Hidden histories, forbidden heirlooms, and perhaps most damning of all, proof that Diana had accessed a part of the monarchy's legacy she was never meant to touch. While the world cried and laid flowers outside Kensington Palace, a different emotion ran through the royal corridors: panic. Not grief, not mourning, but containment. These jewels weren't sentimental, they were strategic. They represented access proof that Diana had crossed into a realm of power she was systematically denied. And Diana? Diana had always danced on the edge of the forbidden. She spoke too openly, moved too freely, loved too boldly. She was a threat, not because of what she did, but because of what she knew. And if those jewels were in her car, there's only one explanation. She was ready to speak, to reveal, to disrupt a lineage built on silence. What was she preparing to expose? Who was the note for? And more disturbingly, who knew she had those items in her possession? Because these weren't just trinkets, they were forbidden jewels, pieces with no documented origin and ties to a vault no monarch dares speak of. Deep beneath Windsor, past the sealed corridors and coded steel doors, lies a vault not listed in official inventories known only to 4 living souls. This vault holds the cursed, hidden, and forbidden relics of the monarchy jewels with bloody origins, exiled owners, and one shocking link: Diana. It is not featured in public records, not acknowledged in official blueprints, not spoken of at royal banquets, or whispered in diplomatic halls. But for decades, former palace aides, retired footmen, and those once close to the crown have all murmured of one untraceable place. They call it the Shadow Vault, a chilling name for a chilling purpose. This is where the monarchy hides its ghosts. Artifacts too dangerous to display. Jewels whose provenance would unravel legacies. Items that never officially existed, but have been passed down through secret hands, through centuries of blood, betrayal, and survival. And this is where Diana's trail begins to darken. The Shadow Vault is said to be protected not just by steel, but by silence. MI5 references to it appear only in redacted files under designations like SVRX or Obj.X Crown. There is no list, no gallery. But its contents are rumored to include gems from plundered Indian temples, heirlooms from overthrown dynasties, and colonial riches wrapped in guilt and forgotten conquest. One source described it simply as a museum of stolen power. And yet, in the final months of her life, Diana came into possession of something unmistakably drawn from its depths. A brooch unlike any known in the royal collection. Its design traced back to Persian origins, a forgotten imperial family, and a betrayal drenched in blood. It was spotted briefly by a former aide pinned to Diana's coat at a private charity event. A moment overlooked by most, but the aide, trained in the visual inventory of royal protocol, recognized it immediately. That piece, he later confided, should not have been there. It should not have been anywhere. The brooch vanished from all official photography. Not one image remains. Why did Diana have it? Who gave it to her? And more crucially, why? To answer that, we must go back to Queen Mary, a monarch known for her ruthless control over royal possessions. She created what palace staff called the Ghost Register, an off-the-books inheritance system allowing certain items to pass through shadow lines of the family, away from the public, and even Parliament. These protocols ensured that items deemed too politically explosive, too scandalous, or too emotionally dangerous never reached the wrong hands or the wrong headlines. And yet somehow, through a thread now lost to time or betrayal, Diana gained access. Some believe it was a sealed gift, sent from a disgraced royal cousin living in quiet exile. Others point to an unverified letter Diana reportedly received bearing the initials EM and stamped with a symbol last used by the Queen Mother's inner circle. A letter said to contain not just the location of a key, but the reason the jewels had been kept hidden in the first place. Emotionally, it becomes unbearable to ignore the weight of it. Was Diana, in her final chapter, seeking not revenge but redemption? Not power, but possession of her own narrative. The monarchy had erased her once before, pushed her to the edge of silence. But this time, she had something they couldn't deny. Something that didn't belong in the Museum of History, but in her own story. A fragment of forbidden truth. A jewel that told the world, without words, "You cannot erase me." But access alone doesn't explain everything. It doesn't tell us how these items left the vault, crossed centuries of secrecy, and ended up in Diana's car that night. And yet, if Diana was never meant to wear these jewels, how did she get them? The answer lies in a betrayal older than her marriage. Before Diana entered the royal family, a private pact existed between the heirs William, Harry, Charles, and a forgotten fourth. a pact built on inheritance, secrecy, and power. But when Diana defied it, she didn't just rebel, she shattered something sacred. It was called the Heirs' Pact. Not written, but remembered. A generational agreement, passed down through nods and closed-door whispers, stipulating the unspoken hierarchy of access and silence. Who received which heirlooms? Who could view what records? Who was allowed to ask questions and who simply wasn't? It existed not to honor tradition, but to protect power. It wasn't about wealth, it was about legacy. And Diana, who was never meant to be more than a charming accessory to that legacy, found herself staring directly into the rot at its core. According to a tape recorded months before her death, never publicly released, but heard by two former aides, Diana referred to it bitterly as an unholy boys' club. A circle of control that extended from Charles to William and Harry and reportedly included a lesser-known royal cousin, once thought to be far from the line of succession, but closer to the vaults than anyone realized. This fourth figure, never officially named, was said to hold one of the keys to the Shadow Vault. And it was through a quiet betrayal, or a deliberate gift, that Diana glimpsed the rules of the pact. The moment she understood its implications, the wheels began turning. And soon, the confrontation came. Weeks before the crash, during a tense private exchange, Diana and Charles clashed not over custody or reputation, but over a sapphire and diamond necklace she had worn behind closed doors. A piece never recorded in any royal archive. A piece meant for the next queen, not, as Charles coldly put it, a disgraced ex-wife parading in borrowed myth. The line struck her like a blade, but Diana didn't flinch. She had something more powerful than a title, she had proof. Documents, she said, showing that dozens of royal heirlooms were not listed in any public inventory. Jewels with no official paper trail, hidden for centuries, and passed along through blood and agreement. And now, at least one was in her hands. One of William's university friends later recounted a moment when the young prince, unusually quiet, mentioned, "Mum had things no one was supposed to touch." There was no elaboration, just a lingering unease, as if even in death she was holding something too dangerous to name. But Diana wasn't interested in flaunting her power. She was interested in protecting her sons. In the days before her final trip to Paris, she reportedly made quiet arrangements to have two items sent to a third-party legal firm in Switzerland, one marked for William's 21st birthday, another for Harry. No further details have ever emerged. But the firm noticed, and it triggered a level of concern that went beyond damage control. It entered the realm of containment. For the monarchy, Diana's quiet rebellion against the Heirs' Pact was more than emotional, it was existential. If the forbidden jewels left the vault, if they reached the public, or worse, her children, the entire edifice of symbolic power risked being exposed as selective, manipulated, and vulnerable. She had broken the lineage of silence. She had looked into the vault not just with eyes of curiosity, but with intent to liberate what was never meant to be liberated, to rewrite the story. But there was one jewel, one symbol, that crossed every line. And it wasn't supposed to exist outside the vault. Twisting in gold, with emerald eyes, and carved with Latin not seen since Henry VIII's court, the serpent necklace had been locked away for centuries. Until Diana wore it, just once, at a private event days before her death. No photos exist. But whispers? They've never stopped. This necklace wasn't part of the crown jewels. It wasn't in the Royal Museum, nor mentioned in any official catalogue. It was, by all accounts, an artifact of disgrace, a relic said to have passed from queen to mistress, from mistress to exile, never worn by any woman crowned or respected. Forged in the late 1500s, the serpent necklace was rumored to have been gifted by a Tudor prince to a lover who vanished under circumstances still debated in royal circles. A curse, some said, was embedded in its very metal. Others called it the tongue of betrayal, an object that exposed the wearer to truths best left buried. The Latin inscription, Veritas vulnerat, truth wounds etched along its inner curve, told a story more damning than any tale of romance. It was not meant to be worn. It was meant to be forgotten. And yet, somehow, it found its way into Diana's possession. At a private fundraiser exclusive, tightly controlled, Diana arrived with a scarf draped loosely around her neck. Only a handful of attendees reportedly caught a glimpse beneath it. One described an ancient-looking necklace, coiled like a serpent, with green stones that felt watching. Another said she looked untouchable, almost prophetic. That night, no photographers were allowed inside. Official portraits were staged away from her. The royal press office denied any notable jewelry choices were made. But the reaction from within the palace was swift and visceral. The Queen's private secretary allegedly demanded confirmation of the necklace's origin the next morning. When records showed the piece was missing from its sealed case deep within the shadow vault, an emergency internal audit was triggered. Not for public security, not for monetary loss, but because Diana had crossed into sacred territory. She had resurrected an item sealed not just in metal, but in scandal. How she found it remains a mystery. Had someone slipped her the key? Had a palace staff member betrayed centuries of silence? Or had Diana, cunning and wounded, simply gone looking in the right places no one expected her to search? Regardless of how it happened, her choice to wear it spoke volumes. She called it, in one of her final handwritten notes, my silent scream. A scream that needed no sound, no interview, no press conference, just presence. To those inside the firm, this wasn't just fashion, it was defiance carved in gold. A warning, a declaration that she had seen what she wasn't supposed to see, and survived it long enough to show the world a glimpse. For years, the royals controlled the narrative, but in wearing the serpent necklace, Diana claimed authorship over her own story, at least for a fleeting, defiant moment. And then, silence. After her death, the palace was quick to retrieve her remaining belongings. Boxes were sealed, items vanished, personal letters were archived far from public view. But one thing was never logged, never seen again, and never returned to any vault: the serpent necklace. Was it lost in the wreckage? Stolen from the car by someone who knew its worth? Or hidden by those who understood its danger? Because if the necklace was never recovered, who took it from the crash site? And why has no one dared speak of it until now? Reports say the Paris police arrived first, but insiders claim an unmarked British vehicle reached the tunnel minutes earlier. Not medical, not press. What were they looking for, and what did they take? More importantly, who sent them? It's a detail buried beneath the chaos, beneath the headlines and tributes. But in the scramble to save a princess, there was a moment, just minutes, when the wrong people had the right access. In that sliver of time, something was removed, something that never showed up in the official records. A velvet pouch, a flash of emerald, a locked briefcase stamped with a royal seal. No one signed it into evidence. No one acknowledged its presence. But for those watching closely, that moment marked a deviation from protocol so sharp, it drew attention in the shadows. Timeline inconsistencies, once dismissed as clerical errors, now appear deliberate. Paris police logs state their officers arrived at the Pont de l'Alma crash at 12:28 a.m. But a witness, a street cleaner on the night shift, reported a black car with British plates entering the tunnel at 12:24, 4 minutes before anyone else. No lights, no sirens, just precision. That vehicle was never logged, never traced. And according to that same witness, it left quickly before ambulances even made it to the scene. Then came the paramedic. Anonymous now, name scrubbed from rosters, but in a protected interview conducted years later, he claimed to have seen a man step out of that vehicle, not in uniform, but in a tailored coat. In his hand, a metal case etched with a strange emblem. It looked like a crown, he said. Not French, British. The man didn't speak. He simply opened the case, took something from beneath Diana's seat, and was gone. At the exact moment Diana was being lifted into the ambulance, a call was placed from the British Embassy in Paris to a secure line in London. The number it dialed was traced not to a hospital, not to the palace, but to a lesser-known address used by British intelligence. The call lasted 42 seconds. No details of that exchange were ever made public. But 2 hours later, an encrypted file labeled Crown Phoenix was uploaded into a classified MI6 archive. That name, Crown Phoenix, would later surface in an internal review marked ultra-sensitive, Royal Protocol Override. It gets darker. CCTV footage from a nearby hotel, originally collected as part of the investigation, was later declared corrupted. A backup tape disappeared. Officials blamed technical failure. But a French technician, later dismissed, claimed the footage showed a gloved hand reaching under Diana's seat. The angle was partial. The figure never identified. But the implication was unmistakable. Someone had taken something before the police ever arrived. And so, the question emerges not just of what was taken, but whether Diana was conscious when it happened. Was she aware of the movement around her? Did she see the face behind the royal seal? Did she know that even in her final moments, a secret was being wrestled from her hands? This wasn't about jewels anymore. It was about erasure, erasing access, erasing evidence, erasing whatever message she was trying to deliver through the objects in that pouch. Because to those watching from the shadows, those items represented more than ornament, they represented exposure. And yet, the question isn't just what was taken, but what those jewels meant. Because their origins trace back to one woman's obsession and a throne that was never hers. Behind closed doors, Camilla curated her own collection pieces, never worn in public, often hidden from official records. Many say she was preparing for a future not yet promised. But when Diana accessed those same pieces, the war turned invisible. In the hushed back channels of royal estate transfers, Camilla's family heirlooms were said to have slipped seamlessly into the broader holdings of the crown. Not through ceremony, not through public acknowledgement, but through discretion, deliberately veiled in the language of tradition. Items once belonging to the Parker Bowles bloodline, rings, brooches, pendants, were quietly merged into the royal inventory, marked not by name, but by date. These were pieces tied not to duty, but to desire tokens passed through whispered arrangements, romantic betrayals, and shadowed ambition. They weren't just jewels. They were markers of a war that didn't play out in speeches or divorces, but in locked drawers and private gestures. There was one moment, often retold in scandalous tones by ex-staff, that exposed the depth of this unspoken feud. At Highgrove, during what was supposed to be a civil exchange, Diana confronted Camilla over a ring, a green tourmaline set in twisted gold, unmistakable in its age and symbolism. "It carries too much history," Diana reportedly snapped. Camilla, caught off guard, remained silent. But behind the scenes, that interaction sent ripples. The ring was removed from view, logged under restricted access, and reclassified as non-displayable. No statement was made, but the tension, already boiling, crossed a line. And then came the mix-up, if it was ever really that. Diana, through a clerical misstep or a calculated maneuver, received a necklace earmarked for Camilla. It was a subtle but unmistakable piece. Rose-cut diamonds surrounding a Roman coin symbolizing permanence, authority, and legacy. Camilla was said to be livid. Not publicly, never openly, but internally, pressure built. Vault access tightened, clearance redefined. Quiet orders were given to limit Diana's interaction with certain archives. The message was clear: not everything belongs to the people's princess. But Diana, by then, had already seen too much. And more than that, she understood the message these jewels carried. For Camilla, the jewels were a placeholder for power not yet fully hers. For Diana, they were proof of a lineage rewritten without consent. She wasn't trying to outshine Camilla. She was trying to reclaim her dignity, to assert that her story could not be edited out of the royal narrative by the slow drip of silence. Some theorists believe that the jewels found in Diana's car, those never mentioned, never recorded, were not relics from royal vaults alone. They may have belonged to Camilla's private collection. If true, that revelation would suggest something far more volatile than a miscommunication. It would suggest retaliation, a final act of defiance, or perhaps of protection. We may never know whether Diana intended to return them, expose them, or pass them on. But she had them, and that fact alone disturbed the very architecture of royal succession. Because, in this quiet war, no words were necessary, only possession. Who held the history, who wore the silence, and who vanished with the final proof. But power doesn't just come from what you possess, it comes from what you silence. And the final jewel, unseen, unnamed, was never meant to be found. No photograph, no registry, no official origin, just a single description in a lost letter. A crown of ice and shadow, never to touch the brow of the broken. Diana had it in the car, but it vanished. Among the monarchy's most unsettling secrets, one item is spoken of only in fear, cloaked in myth and denial, the phantom tiara. A piece so entangled in scandal, even its existence has been denied by those who know it best. Said to have been commissioned in the 1930s, it was created not for a queen, but for a woman. The monarchy refused to crown Wallis Simpson, the American divorcee who triggered the abdication crisis, the woman blamed for derailing a king and humiliating the House of Windsor. For her, this tiara was a gift and a curse. With glacial diamonds cut in an unnaturally sharp design and a band of blackened silver, it became a symbol of the unthinkable. Glamour without legitimacy, power without approval, love without blessing. The Queen Mother reportedly loathed it. Upon Edward's exile, she demanded the piece be buried figuratively, if not literally. It disappeared from sight, buried in an inventory marked heretical objects, reserved for items that were too politically radioactive to destroy, yet too powerful to ignore. And for decades, that's where the trail ends until Diana. Weeks before her final journey, Diana received an envelope. Anonymous. Postmarked London, though no return address. Inside, only a sketch. A tiara, drawn in charcoal, framed by a single sentence. To wear what they buried, you must first rise where they fell. Scribbled at the corner were two initials, W.S. Whether it was a forgery or a final message from a lineage of outcasts, Diana understood its meaning. She reportedly confided in a friend, saying she had been given the ghost of a crown, and that she intended to wear it only once, so they'd never forget. She didn't wear it in public. But on the night of her death, a French nurse, later dismissed and never publicly named, claimed she saw something strange amid the wreckage, a shimmering crescent, tangled in the wreck, unlike any known royal piece. She reached for it, but before she could take a closer look, a man in a dark coat ordered her back. The item was never logged. The nurse never returned to her post. Her testimony was erased from the final inquest. What was Diana trying to say? That the throne had no power over her anymore? That she belonged to a line of women who stood outside the institution but never below it? If she intended to reclaim the narrative of exile, then the phantom tiara was her final act of rebellion, a silent coronation worn in defiance of a system that had once crowned her only to strip her bare. And then, just as suddenly as it appeared, it was gone. But the story doesn't end there. In the years since, whispers have emerged from the shadows of the art world. A private auction in Geneva featured a tiara matching the phantom's infamous description, except listed under a false name. Another sighting in Berlin. Then another in a secret Parisian gallery. Always behind closed doors. Always withdrawn before bidding closed. No authentication. No ownership trail. Just sightings, shrouded in rumor. Which begs the question if the tiara survived. What else escaped that car? Because one royal insider is finally speaking, and his confession changes everything. He swore loyalty to the crown, but he also swore something to Diana. Now, after decades of silence, a former royal butler breaks his silence, revealing what he hid, who he defied, and the single message Diana begged him to deliver. His name is known to few, but within the palace he was once everywhere. The eyes and ears of royal corridors, the keeper of doors not meant to open. For years he said nothing, not out of indifference, but out of fear. Fear of what he knew, and what it might cost to speak. But in a faded, handwritten journal, locked away in a private safe for over 20 years, the truth finally surfaced. In it, he documented every whispered instruction Diana gave him. Every look, every moment she second-guessed her decision, then stood her ground anyway. It is from those pages that a confession has now been pieced together, one that confirms what some always suspected. Diana had help. Just once, he claims, he unlocked access to a sealed compartment in the royal vault, one not listed in the staff's daily inventory, but known only to senior family members. Diana was resolute. She knew where she was going, what she wanted, and how long she had to get it. The serpent necklace was retrieved. The phantom tiara was lifted from its resting place. And in that moment, the butler later wrote, "She didn't look afraid, she looked ready." But what came next was not a plan for display or provocation. It was an act of legacy. Diana handed him a small envelope, wax-sealed, addressed in her unmistakable hand. For William, on his 21st birthday. Only if I am not there. He kept it hidden, tucked inside the lining of a travel coat no one ever touched. He told no one. But each year that passed weighed heavier on him, especially after her sons began to walk the very paths that once tried to erase her. The guilt never left him, nor did the fear. He was warned, in no uncertain terms, to remain silent. Once, during a routine security debrief, a senior official pulled him aside and asked, "You haven't misplaced anything from the vault, have you?" The tone was casual, but the implication was surgical. Then, in his final recorded conversation, his voice frail yet determined, he named the figure who ordered the recovery operation in Paris. A senior royal, still in public life, still celebrated. They were more concerned with what she was carrying than whether she lived, he said. That's what broke me. He never delivered the letter. Instead, it was intercepted, he believes, after his home was quietly searched under the guise of an unrelated investigation. The envelope was never found again, but a second copy, a draft tucked inside his journal, was. Its contents have not been revealed. But the timing of what came next cannot be ignored, because William changed. Subtly, quietly, but undeniably. And now, in the wake of the butler's confession, a question haunts every corridor of the palace. What did William find when he finally read the letter? They thought time would bury everything. But William has never forgotten. In private, he refers to the jewels that never were. And in his coronation plans, something is missing, a message, loud in its silence, echoing back to the car in Paris. It's a phrase William has never spoken aloud in public. The jewels that never were. But those close to him, longtime staff, childhood friends, even former palace aides have all heard some variation of it whispered over the years. A quiet fixation on what was lost, or what was meant to be his, but never arrived. For decades, William has carried something heavier than grief. Something unresolved. A story his mother tried to tell not with words, but with objects that disappeared the night she did. During preparations for his coronation, tensions ran high. Every jewel selected, every historic piece dusted off and brought forward, carried not just ceremony, but memory. And yet, some noticed what wasn't there. William allegedly refused several key items traditionally worn by male heirs, one in particular known to be favored by his father and grandfather. No explanation was ever given. Just a quiet, steady decline of specific pieces, with one aide remarking, "He doesn't want anything touched by that legacy. He wants something different, something clean." Whispers persist that William did, in fact, receive the letter his mother wrote, the one hidden, lost, and nearly erased. Whether it was a copy or the original is unknown, but those who saw him on the morning of his 21st birthday said he was pale, withdrawn. The usual celebration felt like a curtain hiding something much heavier. In the months that followed, he grew more private, more calculating. The prince of duty, yes, but also the son of a woman who was silenced, and who may have left behind truths no crown could comfortably wear. In public, William has carried his role with near-perfect discipline. But during events involving royal regalia, a subtle discomfort emerges. His posture shifts. His eyes harden. A deep unease flickers across his expression, as if each diamond and sapphire bears a question he can never publicly answer. These aren't just symbols of monarchy, they're symbols of what was stolen and what will never be restored. Then came the discovery. Beneath Kensington Palace, a vault newer, smaller, and sealed not by institutional protocol, but by personal legacy terms. Not even senior advisors are permitted to access it. No record exists of its contents, only that William authorized its creation shortly after his 25th birthday. A silent archive of meaning known only to him. Some believe it holds the last fragments of Diana's secrets. Others believe it holds nothing at all, but serves as a monument to the emptiness left behind. And then there's Harry. His relationship with his brother strained, distant, but haunted by the same loss. In a conversation overheard during a brief reunion, Harry allegedly said, "She left things for both of us, but we got nothing." A line delivered not in anger, but in sorrow. Not about material wealth, but about inheritance denied. Truths buried beneath protocol, just like their mother. And finally, the crown. the one William wore on the day he was declared sovereign. Close observers noted something peculiar: a single emerald missing from the right flank. Experts say it was likely intentional. Perhaps a nod to design. Or perhaps something more. The serpent's eye, gone. A jewel erased. The jewels may never be shown, but their shadow remains, because some legacies refuse to stay buried. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll see you next time.